Hello there, welcome to the Football Block. My name is Brandon, and today we have another episode of NewsBits and another episode of the Weekend Roundup, where I'm going to look at everything that's happened over the weekend in Europe's top 5 leagues, or any, major thing that had happened in the world of football over the weekend. And today we have a great episode for you. We have a whole lot of stuff, a lot of big games happened, particularly on Saturday, September 30th. First, we're actually going to start outside of Europe's top 5 leagues, and we're going to start in Portugal. We had El Clássico. We had Benfica against Porto here. It was a very, very close game between the two teams here. Of course, when these two teams play, it's always a wonderful, wonderful matchup. And this particular match here was no different. It was a very feisty game, lots of yellow cards, lots of red cards as well. One red card, a second red card that was taken off by VAR. Very controversial decision there. Benfica was the home team, but I think Porto, you can argue, started the game better. But over time, especially after the red card, I think Benfica was able to grab total control of the game. It ended 1-0. It wasn't, a complete blowout. It was a very slim margin there, but lone goal from Angel Di Maria. A pretty nice strike there. It did take a slight deflection there, but Di Maria continues to be the big game player that he has been throughout his entire career. Despite his age, he's still, showing up when his team needs him most. So let's move on from Portugal to England. We have the Premier League here. On Saturday, we had a bunch of very, very high-profile matches. First off, we start a little bit down the table. We have Aston Villa going up against Brighton, and this ended in a 6-1 demolition of Brighton by Aston Villa. Aston Villa, started off the season a little shaky. They started off with that, terrible destruction of themselves where they lost 5-1 to Newcastle, but I think now everything's just clicking right for them at the moment, particularly in this match here. Brighton, I think, actually didn't play too bad in the first half, but after the third goal and then after the fourth goal, I think they just completely fell apart. I think they just lost total control. It's not common that you see this from this Brighton team, but I predicted that they would kind of struggle this year, and it looks to be relatively true so far. Then we also had Manchester City losing their first game of the season to none other than Wolverhampton Wanderers, a team that has given Pep Guardiola's side trouble over the years. This game, it was very tight, and I think, of course, City did not really show up today like they usually do. But at the end of the day, a team like this that's playing so many tournaments and playing so many games, you're eventually going to lose one or two of them. This is one of those cases. I don't really think there is much to read in here. Huang Li Chan did great for Wolves. He had a wonderful game overall. But moving on from there to the other side of Manchester United lost themselves. They lost to Crystal Palace. Very dull performance. They had most of the possession. Crystal Palace, not necessarily that great of a team, and I think they've kind of regressed a little bit over the past years, but still, they were able to get the better of Manchester United here, and questions are starting to be asked of Erik ten Hag. Now, in my personal opinion, I think he deserves more time, but still, questions are going to be asked. Arsenal completely blew away Bournemouth 4-0. Arsenal is having a wonderful past few weeks in terms of results, in terms of just performances. Great performance here to back it up. And then maybe the most high-profile matchup in Europe's top 5 leagues this weekend, Tottenham went up against Liverpool. And when you consider all the other games that have happened previously this day, for example, Man City losing, Liverpool had a chance to top the table. All they had to do was beat Tottenham. But it's safe to say they bottled it here. I think that overall, it was a very back-and-forth game. It was a very crazy and very controversial game, which we'll get onto in a bit. If you just look at the statistics here, tons and tons of yellow cards. And the score was opened by Heung-Seo Min, who has been playing great. Tottenham, I think, came out the gate swinging. But Liverpool were able to get back into the match. Good goal from Gakpo. And then I think from that moment on, it looked like Liverpool was in the driving seat, even though they were down a man after that red card from Curtis Jones. But once Diogo Jota got 2 yellows in 2 minutes, controversially so, I personally think that they were deserved. But once that happened, once he was sent off, I think Tottenham took total control. But Liverpool were holding on. It looked like it was going to be a 1-1 draw until Joel Matip unfortunately scored an own goal. There wasn't really much he can do about it. It was a good cross from Pedro Porro. But what the big controversy was, at the end of the first half, Luis Diaz looked to have scored a goal, but he was judged to be offside. Look at the replays. It was very close, but it was still relatively clear that he was onside. The VAR looked at it and ruled the goal to be offside, interestingly enough. And then after the game, the English FA issued an apology to Liverpool, denoting that there was a human error and that goal actually should have been given. A wild situation that you don't really ever see. And I think this just goes to show that even though you add VAR, there's still going to be human error here. I think there needs to be, better communication between the referee and then the VAR room. But in the end of the day, I still think, aside from this controversy, I think Tottenham did deserve the win here. I think Tottenham has been surprisingly good, even though Harry Kane left, even though, new manager coming in. Tottenham looked to be a pretty good team this year. On to the next day, there wasn't a whole lot going on. There was just one game on Sunday, and then also one game on Monday. Chelsea got a good win against Fulham. It's a first time in a long time that Chelsea had a good performance. So now let's move on to Spain. Let's move on to La Liga. And the first game we are going to talk about here actually happened on Friday. We had a big matchup, one of the biggest matchups this weekend here at Barcelona facing off against Sevilla. Now, Barcelona has been playing well, but the last 2 games, they've played well at times, but then also looked a little shaky at times as well. Meanwhile, Sevilla have been having a very disappointing season, but Sevilla is the reigning Europa League champions. They still have a very talented squad, and they usually show up when they play Barcelona. In fact, as a Barcelona fan, every time Barcelona plays Sevilla, you can just guarantee that it's going to be an exciting game. Something's going to happen. There's going to be a crazy goal, a crazy save, a red card. Something's going to happen, and this game lived up to the billing. It was only a 1-0 game. It finished 1-0 to Barcelona, but there was tons of chances from both sides. I think that Rafinha played well. Lamine Yamal started, the 16-year-old. He started for Barcelona. He also had a great game. I think that João Felix was unlucky to score. The man of the match, I would honestly give it to João Cancelo. He almost had an assist at the beginning of the game. He dribbled past almost 4 defenders and then played a beautiful ball to João Felix. He was unlucky there. He hit the crossbar with that shot. But that was just one example. Cancelo was all over the pitch, doing well in terms of his defensive duties, but especially going forward, he looks to be exactly what Barcelona needed. The game was very close. Like I said, Sevilla had a lot of close chances, yet none of them were going in for either team until the 76th minute when Sergio Ramos, of all players, accidentally knocked the ball into his own net after a beautiful ball over the top from Ferran Torres and a dangerous cross from Lamine Yamal. Very interesting that Sergio Ramos before this game said that he would love to score his first goal for Sevilla since coming back against Barcelona, and well, he got half of that right because he did score. Now he just scored for the wrong team, of course. It's a shame, I have to say, to be honest, though, because Sergio Ramos was one of the better players on the field. He was having a wonderful performance for Sevilla before that unfortunate own goal. Now on to Saturday. Villarreal tied Getafe 0-0, and they continue their disappointing season after having such, great performances last year and then a great season the year before that with Unai Emery. And it looks to be kind of falling off a little bit. Maybe sacking Quique Setién was not the best decision, at least to do it at that time. Girona, who was top of the table, funnily enough, played against Real Madrid. They hosted Real Madrid at home, and Real Madrid has been coming off some, kind of disappointing results. They got crushed in the Madrid derby, as we talked about last weekend. And they did follow it up with a good win in the midweek game, but this was a true test. and Madrid passed with flying colors, and unfortunately to Girona, who were top of the table. I think it just goes to show that this early in the league, in the season, things can happen like that. You get, a run of easy games. Not to say that Girona is a pushover. They are a good team, and I think they will have a good season. But let's be honest, they're not the team that should be top of La Liga. And with this win here, Real Madrid go top. Jude Bellingham had yet again a great game. He assisted the first goal. Beautiful Trivela outside the boot pass to Joselu, who is finding his shooting boots now. Tchouaméni scored after a really good pass from Toni Kroos. And then Bellingham again scored to, sit comfortably at the top of the Pichichi charts, just as Real Madrid sit top of the table in Liga. Later that day, we also had a huge matchup. We had the Basque Derby. We had Real Sociedad going up against Athletic Bilbao. And in this match here, I think that Athletic Bilbao tried to, play a possession-type game. They tried to hold on to the ball, but they just got absolutely murdered on the counterattack by Real Sociedad. Real Sociedad was incredibly clinical. They were very quick going from one end of the pitch to the other. And one player to point out is Kubo, the Japanese winger, who is, besides, say, Jude Bellingham, is probably the best player in La Liga. Besides, Bellingham, maybe Griezmann. Best player in La Liga this season so far. He looks to be a very, very talented young player there. And then on the next day, we had a crazy draw between Almeria and Granada. Crazy comeback there. Lots of interesting goals in that game. And then Valencia went up against Real Betis. Now, Valencia are going into this season, as we said before, last week, with a very, very poor squad by their high standards. I mean, this is a team that has gone to Champions League finals. They've won the Liga before. And so far, these past few years have not been good for Valencia at all, and it seems to be getting worse, but there's been some bright spots this season. They've had some really good performances. For example, they recently beat Atletico Madrid. However, this match here against Real Betis, not the best for them, and this inexperience and this youthful squad really started to show here. They got obliterated 3-0 by Valencia, and as for Real Betis, this is a performance that was needed. It was a very necessary performance here, considering that they've started very slow as well. And hopefully for their sake, they, or at least their fans, will be hoping that they, go upwards from here and that continue this momentum. Later on Sunday as well, we had Cadiz against Atletico Madrid. And due to a lot of defensive mistakes from Atletico Madrid, uncharacteristic defensive mistakes, Cadiz actually took a 2-goal lead, but out of nowhere, Atletico Madrid fought tooth and nail to make a successful comeback, a 3-2 comeback. Angel Correa showed up out of nowhere like usual. This guy pops up at the most random moments. He showed up, scored 2 goals, and was able to snatch a victory for his team. And then on the Monday, we had one match as well. Las Palmas was able to beat Celta Vigo 2-1. So now let's move on to Serie A, and we had some interesting games as well. Starting off on Saturday, Napoli beat Lecce 4-0. Napoli's finally getting into a groove. They're playing well again. They've had some disappointing results early on in this season, which is expected considering they're coming off one of the most historic seasons in the club's history, winning the Scudetto for the first time in 30 years last year. But I think this was a blast from the past. This was how they played last season in this particular match here. The connection between Kvara and Osimhen. Osimhen was able to score despite there being the whole controversy with him getting mad at the club for that TikTok that the admin posted. That whole very strange situation there, if I'm being honest. But that looks to be set aside. He scored here. He looked like he was playing well. And Kvaratskhelia, or I know I'm not pronouncing that name right, but he is in really good form as well after scoring his first goal in the midweek, his first goal of the season, and his first goal since March of this year. AC Milan played against Lazio in a high-profile matchup here, and I think this game was pretty close. It was back and forth, but this match showed that Milan is superior to Lazio, at least in this season, and Milan is, besides the Milan derby, a very serious team in Serie A this season so far. Christian Pulisic, Captain America, opened the score after a really good assist from Leao, and then Leao showed up again with an even better assist for Okafor to close the door shut on Lazio very late on in the match to make it 2-0. Pedro scored an absolutely banger of a long shot. It would have been a consolation goal, but unfortunately it was ruled off for offside. Correctly so, but still, it is unfortunate to see such a beautiful goal like that being chalked off. Later on in that day, Milan's crosstown rivals Inter Milan had a game against Salernitana. And Salernitana has been one of the worst teams in Serie A. You can argue the worst team in Serie A so far this season. And yet, as the home team, they actually played pretty well in the first half. In my opinion, they were able to shut down most of what Inter Milan was trying to do in the attacking third. That was until the 55th minute when Lautaro Martinez came off the bench. Not only did he score, he ended up scoring 4 goals. Inter Milan finished the game 4-0 winners with Lautaro Martinez scoring every single one of those goals. An absolutely amazing performance from Lautaro Martinez. I think we've been a little desensitized to players scoring hat tricks after Messi and Ronaldo would score a hat trick every weekend. It was a expectation for them to score a hat trick. But this is an absolutely crazy result. It's not often that you see a player score a hat trick, let alone 4 goals, let alone in under 45 minutes after coming off the bench. That was a crazy result there. Absolute world-class performance from Lautaro Martinez, who in my opinion has been the best player of Serie A this season. And I think Inter, comfortably so, are the best team in Serie A last season. I know he said the same thing last weekend, and I think this match just further proves that, which, they're not indestructible, of course. Perhaps they're not as strong as Napoli were last year, but in terms of this season, I think they are ahead of the pack. Now, on Sunday, we had Atalanta going up against Juventus, and this ended in a 0-0 draw. I think Juventus really needed to get a result out of this game after coming off of disappointing performances, a string of disappointing performances, particularly that loss to Sassuolo. And I don't know, I think Juventus started the season well, but now it kind of looks like some of the wheels are falling off, which is expected. You can argue a team in transition, but still, more should be expected of Juventus in a match like this. Roma was able to beat Frosinone 2-0, and this is very, very important for Roma considering how poor they've been playing recently and how bad they started the season. But I have faith in Jose. I think he is one of the best managers of all time, and, of course, it's not always going to be perfect. I think that Roma will bounce back. So now let's move on to Germany. We have the Bundesliga here. And on Friday, we had a relatively big matchup. Not as big nowadays, considering Hoffenheim is no longer, a team that was competing regularly for Europe like they were just a few years ago. But they went up against Borussia Dortmund here. Pretty exciting game end to end. Borussia Dortmund was the more talented team, and that showed as they won 3-1. Elsewhere, we had Stuttgart beating Cologne 2-0. Stuttgart continuing this great form that they had over the past few months. Bayer Leverkusen as well, another team in great form, continued that great form as well, beating Mainz 3-0. Very, very professional performance there. Meanwhile, Eintracht Frankfurt, a team that has always been a serious team in German football and European football over the past few years, fell again to a 2-0 result against Wolfsburg. And then the marquee matchup of the day in Germany, and one of the marquee matchups of the weekend overall, Leipzig hosted Bayern Munich. And in this game, I've criticized this Bayern squad for having some defensive frailties, and this game here was a great example of that, as at one point Bayern were 2-0 down to Leipzig. And remember, this is a Leipzig side that has lost, you can argue, 3 of their best players, or 3 of their 3 best players over the summer transfer window, and yet they're playing like nothing ever happened, like it's the exact same team here. Bayern Munich started off the game very, very disappointingly. They were able to bounce back, a penalty from Harry Kane and then a really nice goal from Leroy Sané. But still, this Bayern team does not look to be the massive giant that they can be. I still think they aren't reaching their potential. We're still early in the season, of course, and they probably will end up winning the Bundesliga. But I think Thomas Tuchel has some serious work to do. Now let's move on to Ligue 1. We're looking at France here. And then on Saturday, we had PSG going up against Clermont. It ended up as a 0-0 draw. Very disappointing result from PSG. They've been very, very hot and cold this season. Like, for example, they lost a game against Nice, but then they followed that up with a great performance against Borussia Dortmund in the Champions League. This is another one of those results. Unfortunately for PSG fans, is one of the more negative results. Of course, it is not a loss, but you would expect PSG to beat Clermont. I hope I'm pronouncing that name of that team right. But we were treated to a lot of goals in a big match later on in the day when Monaco beat Marseille. Big matchup here. Goals from the very first minute all the way towards the end of the second half as well. Balogun, the American player, was able to score and grab an assist as well. He played really well. He looks to be a good signing for Monaco, even though he had that really funny moment where he missed 2 penalties in a single match about a week ago. But Monaco was able to come out on top, which is a great result for them considering how chaotic their team looked like at the beginning of the season. But for Marseille, this is not a good result, especially when you consider that they were looking to be a pretty serious team going into this season. So it's interesting to see if these trends will continue, if Monaco can kind of regain their spot as the second best team in France, or if this is just a flash in the pan. So that has been my weekend roundup looking at Europe's top 5 leagues. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know what you think of that controversial decision, that refereeing decision in the Liverpool-Tottenham game. Do you think that Inter Milan is the best team in Italy? If not, then who? And what are your thoughts on Sergio Ramos scoring that own goal for Barcelona, or in Barcelona's favor at least? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. But anyway, guys, my name is Brandon, and thank you very much for watching.